all of you talked about your personal faith identities and that aspect coming into play and what motivated you to serve the homeless. My question is around how, if there is a relationship between your more faith-based or faith-oriented work and the non-religious or secular organizations out there in and around Cambridge that are also serving the homeless population.
Yeah. So at the Outdoor Church, we draw a major distinction between social service and then our ministry. So that means that, well, it's not that we don't recognize the value of social services. Cambridge is actually a relatively resource-rich area for homeless folks. So what we work very closely with other care providers, so that when we're out on the street and someone has a particular need, be it, like let's say we come into someone who's really trying to get into housing, who really wants that, we need to know, what resources are available. So we send them to Homestart in Central Square. So there needs to be more collaboration among even the care providers, just because everybody's kind of working on small budgets and everybody's overworked, so there's not a lot of time for kind of umbrella work, thinking about how we all work together as a community of care. But as much as possible, we try to draw people into that circle and connect them with the resources that are available to them.
I'll piggyback on that. The Outdoor Church, and I would say ACT also, has no delusions of grandeur. We do not think that our goal or end goal is to end homelessness. We are not resourced to end homelessness. It's not in our capabilities. It's not in our skill sets. But the skills that we do have are skills that are equally important, and we're able to exist with people where they are. And so the first week that I worked as music director, Jed Manis, who is also an HDS alum and the founder of the Outdoor Church of Cambridge, said that I needed to think of the work that the Outdoor Church does as a hospice ministry. The reason being because our focus is on the chronically homeless, people who have been homeless for a year or more, and who odds are going to remain homeless until they die. So our goal is to live in ministry with people and to communicate the love that we have for them and the love that God has for them. Not to think that we're somehow saving them by giving them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But that's not to say that giving them that peanut butter and jelly sandwich is not important, because we're providing them with a token of love and respect. And I think that providing for basic needs is equally important to ending systemic problems. And so at the same time as we provide those basic needs, we connect them with organizations that are resourced, hopefully to one day end these systemic problems that we are not able to solve.
Thank you.
I would just add that I do much of what I have done with ACT, not for the homeless, but for myself, to remind myself that I live in a world with people who have fewer resources, and reawakening myself to that reality is sometimes as important as the act of compassion you offer to another person. So there's some self-serving going on here.
Yep.
Hi. Thank you all very much for sharing about your work. So I volunteered with the Outdoor Church, and one of the things that I found most striking was that we prepare the lunch and we actually take it out to people where they are. And I was wondering if you, Reverend Tom, could speak a little bit to that experience of not so much inviting people into the space and saying, here, come meet us, but actually going out, putting foot to pavement, and serving people.
Absolutely. So speaking as a Christian, I have certain theological commitments. And one of those is that I feel like the Outdoor Church's ministry, it is an incarnational ministry. When you're taking it out, I think, especially in the snow, when you're really like yanking this cooler of sandwiches and juice through Harvard and Central Square, and you're cold, you're really in your body, and for me, the Christian story is a story about how God came down to earth to be with people. And as much as possible, I think we as Christians, we're called to go out and be with people, to go out with people in their context and be with them. And I also am the director of a soup kitchen, so I think there is a need for hunger relief programs that as a common sense strategy for feeding a lot of people. However, there are always going to be people who don't have the capacity to access those resources. And I think it's a moral and ethical commitment saying that, yeah, we need to go out and take things to those who need it. Yeah, so that's how would I answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two quick questions. First of all, on the issue of this lewd lascivious thing, I mean, I don't think I have many illusions about how deeply inhumane and how classist a lot of American and Cambridge, Massachusetts law is, but I was shocked by that. Well, in addition, I mean, I think it's great to provide toilets, but shouldn't we get something done about that law? I mean, isn't that law outdated at the very least? And shouldn't we at least redefine it so there'd be a difference between going to the bathroom and you know, exposing yourself for the kick it gives you? So that's my first question. The second question is more a proposal or more my take on this. I think the idea of toilets is great, but I think that these toilets should be construed and set up. First of all, I think they should provide wash facilities because I think people also like to be clean. But I think it should also be a place where we wouldn't mind going to the bathroom. When I need to use the bathroom in Harvard Square, I go to the Charles Hotel. You go here. Now, you know, that doesn't work. That doesn't work toward less marginalization or less ghettoization of these people. So I wonder if there could be ways of construing this washing and eliminating facilities so that we would use it too.
So you should know that if you go on the Atlantic Monthly's website, you'll find an article on the so-called Portland loos. And this is literally a construction that we're trying to persuade Cambridge to pay attention to, that tries to address some of the city's repeated reasons for not building a public toilet. It's very attractively designed. It's stainless steel. It has a wash basin, but the wash basin is on the outside of the facility, not on the inside. And it is entirely usable by anyone, and anyone would feel comfortable, I believe, using it. It also is slatted at the top and the bottom, which allows both for constant ventilation to keep odor and things under control, but also allows police passing by to keep an eye on it as well too. We're a little worried right now about whether Cambridge winters will work with that kind of slatting system. But at this point, I'm very much in my life a half a loaf rather than no loaf man in terms of trying to get a toilet built. What we've said repeatedly to the city manager is that as far as we're concerned, this is a test case, a pilot case, and that we know that there are needs for these sorts of facilities all across the city. But if we can get past this first hurdle and assuage the concerns of the manager and the people that he listens to, then doing all of that will come more quickly. So it may not be that we can get a Charles Hotel level toilet put into Harvard Square next to the... No, I'm being facetious. Right. But we're trying to be very attentive to quality and feel that goes with the design. But again,
have you looked at the French style?
Yeah, and they've been a disaster when they've been used in the United States. Yeah. Seattle, San Francisco, and a couple other cities experimented with them, and something about Americans was able to destroy toilets that aren't destroyable in Europe. So
well, what about the legal?
We are Americans.
What about the legal approach?
All right, so I think the second part of your
there?
question about the legal, so why petition for a common toilet? Why not get all those signatures together and get people to change the law?
So I guess there are a couple reasons, one of which was we were focused on this eminently practical issue because it had arisen out of watching my church close its doors and not seeing other churches volunteer to open theirs. So the situation, and talking with Denise Gilson of the Harvard Square Business Association, the concern of lots of business people that the day after those doors closed, there were pools of urine and piles of feces in the alleyways between the buildings, and it was going to be a disaster on several levels, public health as well as personal dignity. So we focused on what would solve that problem by providing a facility. To be honest, I haven't focused on turning toward resolving that law. My intention actually right now is starting to move toward a program called Raise Up Massachusetts, which is an attempt to raise the minimum wage in the state of Massachusetts by $2 an hour, because when I think as an economist, I move constantly between the micro and the macro, and when I look at the problems, not specifically of the homeless, but the oftentimes near homeless, who outnumber them by tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands in the state, I want to get those wages up, because I know wages are intrinsically important to keep from manufacturing more homelessness and more suffering. So it's a good issue. It's just not one that I know that in the coming year that I'll turn to. I'm going to get this done, and then I've got one foot in the Raise Up campaign. And you guys may want to
Well,
say
I'll just chime in that I think that the toilet conversation is kind of geared towards homelessness because Zach and I are here right now. But the people who are supporting this organization, like we've sat out and had people write postcards to city council, and some people do express moral outrage that we're not providing a service for homeless folks. But then there's so many stories about parents, who are walking through Harvard Square and have nowhere to take their child to go to the bathroom. The Youth Soccer League is also an organization who's involved in Cambridge Act. And on the Common, there's softball teams and students, and this is a good thing for
Well, haven't
tons of different
feminists had
constituencies.
pee-ins at Harvard Square in past years? They had pee-ins right in Harvard Square.
your generation a little too late for that. It's more my generation. That's a whole thing that's going on.
Not that
Yeah.
long ago.
Sounds like a crazy time.
And in reference to the French-style toilets, in a lot of European countries, they'll have a place where you can pay a few cents, is usually about $50, and it gives you 15 minutes in the place, and then it opens up,
Yeah,
and as you
right.
leave, basically at the end of the day, will flush itself out completely, like
Yeah.
water will spray on the
Yeah,
inside.
exactly.
And that's a really inventive design because it pays for itself with people giving money, and then it also has advertising on the outside. And that was something that we looked into, but other American cities have tried these, and there's a great aversion in America to having to pay to use the restroom,
Yeah.
and so they've failed. People just will not pay 50 cents to
Pay
use the
people
restroom in
to
America.
use it, yeah.
And so the Portland Loo is a similar design that's free.
So I saw a hand here and then one there. Jared.
Yeah, thank you guys for bringing this subject up. I think it's a great time of year to start thinking about this too.
Absolutely.
I'm curious. When I first arrived here at Harvard, it was shocking to see how many homeless were outside the walls of the richest college in the world. And I think about Washington D.C. Has a number of homeless people. At the state capitol, one of the richest countries in the world. And so I'm curious, what are these institutions doing? What is Harvard doing that's attracting 8 million tourists, Because Harvard Square is a center for a lot of homeless people. Is there a reason for that? And does it have to do anything with the college being here? And with great wealth comes great responsibility. And so what is the institution doing to play a role in this? I know you guys are part of the institution, but at a higher level, what are they doing beyond public, the public agents that are responsible?
So I'm a Dartmouth graduate. I never expected much from Harvard.
And you were disappointed.
I've never been let down. Aim low, walk tall. That's I haven't bothered to deal with Harvard on this issue. It's an enormous bureaucracy. I do know some people in the administration, but it seemed to me that there was more to gain by actually teaching people how to mobilize and to become comfortable working with one another across denominational boundaries, across work boundaries, than it was to go to Mass Hall and get somebody to write a check. That can be done. That produces a solution, but it only produces a certain kind of solution, and it doesn't build the capacity that this work has been building, because there are going to be other issues. I mean, some of the people who are working with us on ACT are already wheeling with me to collect signatures for the Raise Up Massachusetts petition. We were all out in force on Oktoberfest passing out petitions for toilets and passing out petitions to raise up the minimum wage. Now, we kept them in separate hands because it was too confusing to explain why pooping and wages were tied together. But building that capacity is more important for me in the long run than getting the specific toilet bill or whether Harvard comes on board with a check for $50,000. So.
Yes.
I really want to respond to this gentleman's question. To be fair to Harvard,
Oh, don't do that.
through Phyllis Brooks' house, Harvard really co-sponsors really one of the most outstanding student-run shelters from November to April. And they also, it's entirely volunteer run, and you know, kids are, some of the kids are probably kind of naive. I manage a men's shelter, so I have some contact with them, but it's really, you know, I'm really sort of impressed with what they can do with what they have. So the other thing, I'm glad you brought up the minimum wage, Richard. This is just sort of off topic, but I've been driving, I manage a men's shelter, and I've been driving around for work at Harvard. If you want to call driving around Cambridge this fall, driving. And it occurs to me, and I'm really not like scapegoating cops at all, but it occurs to me that this police detail officer is making between 300 and 400% more than what a human service worker who is tending to the homeless, advocating for housing. Actually, in a broader context, you know, working with school-age children and caring for elderly Alzheimer's people.
Sure.
So I think one of the things, that I think people maybe when we talk about how to make this. You know, you guys are this may be stretching the topic. Thinking about sort of realizing this from an interfaith perspective, and you spoke of this work as incarnational, but for a lot of people, it's also a profession and a career, and it's scandalously unsustainable. And so I just want to sort of make sort of put a plug in for the sort of career people. There was a gentleman who just recently retired, who was well into his mid-70s. He was kind of a case manager, social worker for Bread and Jams, and which is this sort of all-purpose agency that kind of provides multi-services to the homeless. It is a great day drop-in center. I mean, for people with disability have nowhere to go. If you're leaving a shelter at 8 p.m. and you have a cold or you feel like crap, you can go get a hot meal there. And but he, this guy, you know, I don't know if he was sort of touched by if he was divinely inspired. His name is Arthur Shirtliff, and I just have to say he was really one of the most amazing people, and I think the gift he has that it sounds like all you guys were referring to this is it's a gift of listening. I think a lot of people sort of approach me with this sort of age-old conundrum, and I never know how to answer it, is do I give them money when someone asks me for money? And to me, it's about you and your sort of content. I usually don't. I mean, I just because I don't have it, and I'm better equipped to direct them to where there are resources.
Can I jump in
Sure.
to what you're saying? I think it's really important in the context of the Divinity School to think about several key facts. The first is that America is by far the most religious of the Western industrial democracies. It has the largest membership in terms of percentages of population in churches and synagogues and other religious organizations. It also has the highest crime rates, the highest poverty rates, the highest homelessness rates. And so there is something that has structurally failed in the relationship between private belief systems and the delivery of what any other industrial democracy would consider essential normative goods and services. I think a central reason that it has failed is that we are a disestablished country in which those churches concentrated more often on their congregations than on their communities. One of the nature of a multi-denominational society is that unlike the Catholic Middle Ages, there was no parish assigned to one geographic area so that one was a member of a parish and served both by the government and by the church in the ways that that labor might have been divided. The other thing is that I think that there still is a profound divide between the mainline tradition I come out of and much in the evangelical tradition, which from my vantage point is very dangerous in the evangelical tradition, which is an emphasis on personalism. It's an important feature of evangelical Protestantism to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and I don't want to say that that's in any way something I theologically object to. But too often in that evangelical tradition, there is no capacity to build in social structure that incorporates the use of democratic government or other institutions than individual or small group charity as a means for addressing suffering and poverty. And I have a fundamental ecclesial and theological quarrel with that, and I'm relentless on it. And I'd be glad to talk with anyone at great length about why I am relentless on a doctrine of personal redemption that ends up as a doctrine of personal charity as a surrogate for well-funded, well-financed, well-paid work that delivers necessary social services in a capitalist economy that's incapable of maintaining full employment.
I think we could all talk at great length about this topic. And I'm growing aware that we are coming toward the end of our hour together. And I just wanted to make sure that we all took one more opportunity to thank our panelists.